were to go to a dealership, buy a motorcycle, you pay for it, you ride away, and the suspension will never be touched. It was assembled at the assembly location, wherever that is, and then it was shipped to the dealership, and they uncrated it and did some minor assembly stuff on it. I don't even know what Ducati does as far as basic assembly. But generally speaking, it's like maybe moving. A lot of them come just ready to go now. They used to be able to jam as many crates on the ship as they could. The clip-ons would be slid in and the mirrors would be tucked in, or they wouldn't be attached yet. But overall, you're getting the bike just like it sits. And depending on what type of bike it is, it could be from this thing that is like a bouncing pogo stick going down the road to something that's set up very, very stiff. Okay? Now, I'll tell you, these bikes are fantastic, but the 1098, 1198 off the showroom floor, the stock spring rates are, especially the rear, is very stiff. Okay? You can see the rear spring on here. Okay? And that's serious.
Is that USA only, or?
No, it's everywhere. That's the spring rate, okay? And it's very stiff spring rate. You basically, you know, the best thing you could do is take out the shock and have a proper spring for you put in there, but it's kind of set for about a 220-pound guy or so. But if you just, you know, once again, you don't want to start chucking a bunch of money at a bike that's expensive. You know, the quality of this motorcycle demands a premium price, and for some reason the guy who's selecting the spring rates for the suspension is, I don't know, he puts some stiff spring rates on this bike. For the beginning rider, it makes the bike feel rather racy, because you just paid for 1200 cc's of Desmo power. You want to feel it, right? So when you take off out of here and you whack that throttle open, because the rear suspension doesn't absorb any of that by having any type of motion whatsoever, it will snatch up into a wheelie and you're like, this is the fastest bike on the planet. Okay? The problem with that is when you get down off that wheel and you shut the throttle, it comes down and there's no preload on the forks and the baby bottoms out. That feels funny. Or on the flip side of that, you go to throw it into your favorite corner, and because the bike, it's advertised at 97 millimeters of trail, that's not always what they have. I haven't seen one yet that actually has that number. They usually have less. And 100 millimeters of trail is like a really sweet spot for these bikes. So if you have 94, this thing is like really getting in the corner really fast and feeling kind of twitchy. Okay, so maybe sliding the forks down in the triple clamp can kind of counteract. You'll get a little more trail back. That's the reason behind the whole invention of the different offset triple clamps for these bikes, is to try to get some trail numbers back into them, make them a little more stable on their side. Well, it feels like it's getting in the corner really good, but then once it's over on its side, it's settled out, it's good, but that initial turn-in can be a little weird. And then once you accelerate off the corner, the ones with the Showa forks, they got a pretty good top-out spring in them, and there's a lot of initial play when you lift up on the fork here. See that? Where it drops down a bit. Because the back end doesn't move, and that you don't get a lot of weight transfer there, and it tops that fork out really quick. And once that fork gets topped out, what's that doing? It's choppering out the front end, and the bike will want to push wide off corners. And that can be a little scary once you start getting faster and become a better rider, where you're whacking the throttle off the corner and the thing wants to run you into the ditch over there. So that's why, you know, changing what you have an adjustable suspension, get it set up for you and your riding style. It'll help you a huge amount.
So I got one more question.
Yeah.
I have an 848, and you said that the adjustable arm in the back, it's not adjustable, right? It's just
have
pretty
the
high.
Yeah.
I noticed.
The arm, yeah. If you actually, I think if you put a 848 like right next to a 1098, I think they're a little higher. But
Or do you get higher?
yeah, and that's a kind of a compensation thing because you know, and it's all a measurement thing. I'd have to slap the ride height tool on there. I actually haven't measured the rear ride height on an 848 yet, but there's some sweet spot numbers that they need to be in. You know, the distance from the measurement tool to the center line of the axle, and to get it right. So it depends on your riding style. Some bikes, since if you're a better, a faster rider, yeah, you may need to add that rear ride height adjuster and work with your front geometry to change the ride height of the bike to get it to perform better. But that all really, you know, if you take a beginning rider and, you know, play with the geometry on the bike, he's not going to really notice a whole lot of difference if you're just starting out. It's once you're progressing in your skill level that you start to find the limitations of the bike. Like, yeah, you're sitting on its nose, and that's typical of the stance of the Ducati, the way it's designed, and it does tend to sit up. And it could be very well that you have a ton of sag in your front forks, you know, and the rear is super, super stiff. So if you're just sitting on it and the back end doesn't move at all, and the front end drops a bunch, now you're up on your nose, and that's why it's important to get it checked out straight away. Okay, and basically, you know, currently as this bike sits, you know, it's fairly unbalanced. The back end's not really moving, and the front end's moving a lot. Can you see that? Yeah. So this is something. You know, you want the bike to compress and rebound at equal speed, which the damping on here isn't too bad, but the spring rate is a little off. Yes, sir.
We messed that up on purpose.
Of course. And I brought my handy dandy 3mm tool in here just to show you some of the differences in, you know, what you can get, especially with the Öhlins forks. Man, there is a ton of adjustment on these forks, and really each click you can feel on these. So this is a bike with basically your rebound damping backed out all the way. You saw it when I pressed on it a minute ago. Things like a pogo stick right now, right? Well, the opposite of that is if it's all the way in and it's operating too slow, you start to, an old dirt bike phrase is you're suffering from a term called packing, where the suspension is gradually losing its travel because you're hitting bumps and it's compressing, but it can't rebound fast enough before the next bump hits, and you just gradually run it out of travel till pretty soon basically your front suspension becomes your tire, which is a bad. So what do you want? It's something basically in between.
Looks like 12 clicks out.
About there. Just count the clicks. So.
I was so right.
Intel.
I'm gonna run out and do it on mine.
Yeah. Where's my 3mm?
Yeah, I got a question real quick before you go. So generally with suspension, is there like a certain amount of clicks each way? I mean, is there like a dead zone? Like this is 0 and you go -1, +1?
Good question. When basically the big secret that all the suspension guys have is how we measure stuff, but you'll see it in magazines and things like that. 99.9% of the time, if you hear somebody talking about 12 clicks, it's measured from fully in. Yeah. So you basically, and be gentle guys, we've got some big gorillas out here. Don't just hammer that adjuster in, because that's nice stuff inside there, okay? Don't bury that needle into the little opening down there. It controls fluid flow and you'll jack it up. So gently let the bike go to the limit of its turns or clicks, depending on the suspension maker. It will have one or the other, and until it stops, and then count your clicks out for your measurement. Almost everybody uses from fully closed to, you'll see the term either COFM or TOFM, clicks out from max or turns out from max, and that's you all the way in, and then count the clicks on the way out. Okay, but good question, yeah. A lot of people that are like, well, where does it go? Some bikes, you know, you'll feel a couple clicks. Other bikes you won't. And some bikes you'll almost have to run the thing. They don't have good, the shim stack in there that controls the fluid flow. It either lets too much or too little fluid by. So some bikes you'll need to use a lot of damping control or very little damping control based on the circuitry that's in place there. Okay?